We all hear about AI being this universal tool, right? But what if it's not? What if it doesn't speak your language, the way you actually think and communicate? Today, we're going to dig into a really critical challenge. How do you build an AI that gets how different all our brains are? And we're going to look at one project that's trying to do just that.
So let's get right into it. Have you ever been talking to an AI like ChatGPT, and even though it's super smart, something just feels off? For a lot of people, these chats are seamless, but for a huge group of users, especially neurodivergent folks, it's a totally different story. The conversation just doesn't land. The advice is kind of useless and generic, and a tool that's supposed to make life easier, well, it ends up creating more work.
But check this out. Here's where it gets really interesting. This quote points to a total paradox. While these AIs can feel super alienating, a study from 2024 actually found that some autistic workers would rather get communication advice from an AI than a person. Why in the world would that be? Well, because the AI is structured, it's direct, and it doesn't judge. And that right there, that highlights the whole problem. This amazing positive experience isn't the default. Users have to fight for it, engineering their own way to get there.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the AI communication gap, then look at why there's a neurotypical default. After that, we'll get into engineering a personal AI, how Jentle AI is built, and finally, we'll tackle the tricky ethics of it all. Okay, first section, the AI communication gap. So what's the core issue? Well, these AIs that are supposed to be for general purpose, they're not really built on a general model of how we all think, not even close. There's this invisible, baked-in bias. And that bias has a name. It's called neurotypical bias. Basically, the AI defaults to a communication style that, for someone with ADHD or autism, can just be a lot. It's too wordy, it's vague, and it's not helpful at all. So to get a decent answer, you're stuck in this endless, frustrating loop of tweaking your prompts and trying to translate what the AI is even saying.
So that brings us to our next question. Why is this the default setting? Where does it come from? Well, it all goes back to the data these things are trained on, and we're seeing the real-world fallout from that, documented by the people who are dealing with it every single day.
You know, researchers actually looked into this. They analyzed discussions across 61 Reddit communities and found the same problems popping up over and over again. People were saying the AI's answers were just too neurotypical. It was a huge struggle to get simple, structured advice. They felt like they were constantly having to translate generic stuff, which, as you can imagine, is just exhausting. The tool itself became a source of frustration.
And this slide just shows it perfectly. Take a look. On the left, you've got your standard AI response. Vague, and it basically throws all the work right back at you. But on the right, that's the goal. That's a response built for someone who might have a hard time with executive function. It's structured, it's actionable, and it's all about building momentum instead of just adding to the overwhelm.
So, faced with this massive gap, did people just give up? No way. They started engineering their own fixes. You can go online right now and find communities just filled with these custom prompts and workarounds. We're talking complex instructions people have written to basically force the AI to be more direct or structured. And if that doesn't scream, we need a better tool, I don't know what does.
And that's the perfect lead-in to Jentle AI. This project is all about taking those manual, grassroots workarounds and turning them into a real, engineered solution that works for you right out of the box.
The secret sauce here is something called a dynamic system prompt. What is that? Okay, think of it like a permanent instruction manual for the AI that's written just for you. So instead of having to explain yourself over and over in every chat, this prompt is always there in the background, acting like your personal translator. It tells the AI exactly how to talk to you from the moment you start typing. And the whole process is meant to be super simple. Here's how it works. Step 1, you take a quick one-time quiz about what you need and how you like to communicate. Step 2, the system takes your answers and builds that unique prompt just for you. And step 3, you start chatting. That's it. The AI is already tailored to you. No extra setup, no hassle. Okay, so how do you actually build something like this? Let's peek behind the curtain at how this idea becomes a real thing. The secret is all about what information it gathers and, maybe even more critically, what it decides not to gather.
So that onboarding quiz, it's really focused on practical stuff. It'll ask about your neurotype, sure, but also about how you want to see information. Do you want bullet points or full paragraphs? It also gets into the specific cognitive hurdles you might face, like having trouble prioritizing things or figuring out what vague instructions mean. The whole point is to get just enough info to be truly helpful without getting all up in your personal business.
And the timeline for building it is just as thoughtful. I mean, look at this. Ethics isn't some checkbox at the end. It's right there in weeks 1 through 3. They're spending a ton of time on building and testing internally before it ever sees the light of day with a small beta group. That kind of safety-first thinking is absolutely crucial for a tool that's this personal.
Which brings us to what might be the biggest challenge of all, the ethical tightrope. When you build something this personal, you're not just coding an app. You're balancing its usefulness against some really heavy responsibilities.
And you can see how seriously they're taking this. For privacy, they collect as little data as possible, and they make sure it's never used to train the main AI. For consent, they're going to be super clear. This is an AI tool, not a human, and definitely not a doctor. But the really tricky one is this idea of masking. That's the pressure neurodivergent people often feel to kind of hide who they are to fit in. The goal here is to build a tool that helps bridge communication gaps, not one that just teaches you how to conform better.
So, when you boil it all down, Jentle AI isn't really about just one app. It's bigger than that. It's like a blueprint for a different kind of future, a future where our tech adapts to us and not the other way around. It's a whole new framework for building AI that's just more inclusive and more respectful of everyone.
And that's really the big question this whole project leaves you with, isn't it? If we can teach an AI to speak our own individual language, just imagine what else it could learn to do for us. The second we start expecting our technology to meet us halfway, it just opens up this whole new world of tools that can actually empower us. Thanks for joining this Explain 'em.